Hello, beautiful humans. Today's conversation is focusing around knowing when you're getting close to the goals, the aspirations, and ultimately the truth of who you are and how it's going to feel. So where did this come from? I was listening to the audiobook of Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it. And one of the quotes, it goes, "Truth is like a jalapeno. The closer to the center, the hotter it gets." I thought that was very timely, considering it as a reflection where I'm at in life. And ironically, all the things I've been witnessing around me, it seems like every conversation I'm having is about things circling towards these challenging moments, the precipice of big breakthroughs. And the harder part to realize is that when those moments are happening, everything else seems to culminate in all the pressure. Everything seems to all rise to the surface. And why I think this is valuable is because I look at it as the final boss in a video game. Before you level up, you go through an entire level, you go through an entire sequence, a phase, a challenge, and you get to the boss, and ultimately the boss in that level is a test. All those skills and all those abilities that you were practicing or nurturing throughout that phase. It brings all the stuff to the surface, and you need to put it all together in one fell swoop. And while it feels overwhelming, that's the point. Because for you to break through to the next level, you must be able to demonstrate competency in all these skills that you've been working on. You've broken each one of those things down. You're able to handle each one of those skill sets, whether it was in your health, whether it was in your business, whether it was in your marriage or relationships, your family, your friends. In the times leading up to it, the universe typically responds. It presents each one of those as opportunities for us to tackle each one of them individually. And they're segmented off. But ultimately, we don't function in silos. We're not robots. We're not just this one function. We have all these different elements of our life integrated all in one. And more often than not, the things we struggle with in one area is exactly what we're struggling with in another area, except it doesn't seem like that on the surface. So that breakthrough moment is to feel all those pressures, to feel all those difficulties, to feel all of those challenges all at once, knowing that you have practice each one of those skills, or you've strengthened each one of your skill sets in each of those capacities leading up to it. Now, the hard part is it doesn't feel good when you're in the moment. It feels like a lot of pressure, it feels like a lot of stress, it feels like a lot of overwhelm. In many ways, it might even feel like you've gone backwards. It might feel like you're no better off than where you started. The whole point is to be able to test those skills amidst all the stress, because you don't know what the next level is going to be on your journey. I've done a video before on the ceiling of complexity before, and often during these times it's to break through that ceiling of complexity. When we have accumulated all this stuff, this knowledge, these wherewithals, to break through is to humble ourselves, to take a step back, to test these things. But in the test, it's also, what are we leaving behind? What are we letting go of? What do we no longer need to carry? Whether it's old burdens of the past, old stories we kept telling ourselves. Sometimes it's relationships that no longer serve us or that need to be recalibrated. But ultimately, it's an old shadow of ourself, an old identity that we must sacrifice. That we didn't even realize it's that spiritual baggage that we're clinging to. And this moment of stress, this ultimate test, in this heat and this pressure, when you confront it all. In confronting it, we can actually do something about it. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel good in the moment, but it's us pushing towards the truth. Much like the quote says from truth is like the center of the jalapeno. And I'll quote another favorite of mine. My favorite show of all time is Ted Lasso. And one of my favorite quotes in there is from his therapist. She says, "The truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off." That's the pressure cooker. That's the friction. That's the challenge. That's the test. And ultimately, that's the moment of sacrifice. Are we willing to sacrifice that protective element of our ego in order to be more vulnerable, in order to be more free? And ultimately, we realize the pain we're holding on to, the suffering we're putting ourselves through, or at least the unnecessary suffering, is us clinging to something of the old. The only way to free ourselves of it is to let go of control. And while we feel like we might be losing something, it's actually opening us up to where we want to go. I'm sharing this also in an effort of my own vulnerability. I've been feeling some back pain this week. I've been grappling with sleep, especially last night. All of the thoughts around the impending moment. I might get a call at any moment right now from my wife saying, "Hey, I'm going into labor." Needless to say, all of my insecurities, all of my fears, they've all come to the surface. And I'm sitting there and weighing them in my restlessness and reminding myself that these are the moments. These are typically the things that happen before something great happens in my life. And that is a blessing. It's a blessing if we choose to look at it that way. the irony of the challenges we see in our life, that if we can reevaluate the pain and suffering we're experiencing, ask ourselves instead, what is this teaching us? What is this preparing us for? I have noticed that perspective shift, as opposed to being distraught and resentful towards the pain. When I finally come through to it, it's like a woe is me type of energy that I experience towards it. When I can finally rectify that, and I can finally come back to some level of peace, I ask myself, what is this teaching me? What is this preparing me for? And usually, not too very long after, something happens. I've surrendered to whatever the process is. Something happens that reminds me I'm on the right path. And the pain or the suffering or the whatever it was, I can see it for what it was. I can see it for the lesson that it was teaching me. And I can appreciate it for its purpose. And that's what helps me grapple with those moments. I think ultimately we want to feel like the discomfort we're facing is leading towards something. It's helping us prepare for something. It has to serve a purpose. It has to mean something. Some people might say that's not the case. But for me, when I'm going through it, that's what helps me get through those moments. It helps alleviate some of the pressure. It helps me re-clarify how am I living my life. It re-clarifies who am I spending my time with. It re-clarifies how am I speaking to myself. Where am I spending my time? What are the activities I'm working on? What's the work I'm engaging in? What am I feeling called to? Ultimately, the successes we achieve or experience, or the peace of mind we experience, comes from the appreciation that goes of going through the discomforts and the pains and the challenges we face. If we choose to ignore them, we don't get to experience the other side of that. Actionable steps. Number 1, become aware. Are you feeling these signs and symptoms? Do you feel like there's a wave of overwhelm of pain, like all the things are coming on? If you feel that, perhaps this time, instead of resorting back to old ways of here it is again, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, how can we look at it as a sign of growth, a sign that you've arrived at the next level, at a new challenge? Doesn't mean it's not going to be difficult. Doesn't mean there's not going to be obstacles you need to overcome. Perhaps start asking yourself, wow, how can I get through this in a more curious way? Less a judgmental way or a fatalistic kind of way. Or how can I work through this? How can I embrace this challenge? And I think you'll be surprised. You'll realize that you have all the tools. You'll realize that you have been quite literally practicing for these moments, and you're more than capable of handling this. I like to believe that we are only given what we are capable of handling. However seemingly insurmountable it is in the moment, it's these moments that show us, or allow us to show ourselves, that we have the strength and the capacity, not only in ourselves, but also in the systems and that we've created, the people that we've welcomed into our life. You never really know how strong all of those things are until you stress test them. And perhaps the challenge is the gift for you to reinforce your belief in its strength, especially when you step into the new level of abundance in your life, whatever that might be, whether it's financial, relational, physical health, or all three. You know that the system can handle that. The system is reliable, and you can be at peace with it, which often people are not. That's the reason why they go and destroy it, because they're not capable of handling it. Lottery winner goes right back to where they were within 3 years, something like that. Can't maintain the success because they don't actually have the support systems in place and the lifestyle to be able to maintain that, nor do they believe they're worthy of it. This test is just showing you that you're finally ready to handle the next level of abundance, so that when you have it, you can rest more assured that you're capable of leading with a level head, with a peaceful heart, with a peaceful mind, and you can just simply enjoy it.